They called it the Roaring Twenties. Jazz, bathtub gin, fortunes seemingly conjured from thin air. America was on top of the world, high on optimism, drowning in its own success. But beneath the glittering surface, the shadows stretched long and deep. They reached into the halls of power, staining the very heart of Washington. Some secrets fester in the dark corners where money and power meet. Some deals drenched in oil and greed refuse to stay buried. Tonight, we pry open the lid on one of the biggest political scandals in American history. A story of bribery at the highest levels, a conspiracy that implicated the president's own cabinet and sent a man of power tumbling into disgrace. This is the Teapot Dome scandal. Before we dive into the smoke-filled rooms and back-alley deals that define this era of shadowed prosperity, let us know where you're tuning in from tonight. Drop your city or state in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how far these dark tales travel across the map. Now, let's wind the clock back. Washington, D.C., 1921. The air thick not just with humidity, but with opportunity and temptation. The nation was eager to forget the war, eager to embrace the future. President Warren G. Harding, a man whose easy smile and good looks seemed custom-made for the optimism of the age, promised just that, a return to normalcy. He brought his friends with him to Washington. His poker buddies from back home, the loyal circle soon dubbed the Ohio Gang. Their loyalty, however, often seemed directed more towards each other than towards the public trust. And Harding, perhaps too trusting, perhaps simply overwhelmed, let them have their run of the place. Among this inner circle, one man stood out not just for his connections, but for his ambition, masked by a rugged Western charm, Albert B. Fall. Former senator from New Mexico, a rancher, a man who understood the power lying dormant beneath the vast American landscape. Harding saw a capable friend. Fall likely saw opportunity knocking louder than duty called. Harding appointed him Secretary of the Interior. The immense power over the nation's public lands, forests, and mineral resources was now concentrated in Fall's hands. This power included oversight of the naval petroleum reserves, vast oil fields in California, Elk Hills, and Wyoming, Teapot Dome, specifically set aside by previous administrations to fuel the Navy in times of war or national crisis. They were the nation's strategic insurance policy, locked away under the Navy Department's careful watch. Or so everyone thought. Fall, now firmly installed at Interior, saw these reserves not as a safeguard, but as a shortcut to the kind of wealth his government salary could never provide. His first move was subtle, wrapped in bureaucratic red tape. He needed control. He approached the affable, easily influenced Secretary of the Navy, Edwin Denby. The conversation, one imagines, might have gone something like this, perhaps over cigars and brandy in a private Washington club.
Edwin, good to see you. Pour yourself a drink. Now, about these naval reserves. Teapot Dome, Elk Hills, valuable assets, no doubt. But wouldn't you agree, the Navy isn't really equipped to manage oil fields day to day? Drainage issues, potential squatters. It's a headache you don't need. Interior, on the other hand, we have the expertise, the manpower. Transferring oversight to us, well, it just makes practical sense. Efficiency, Edwin. Security.
Whether Denby truly bought the efficiency argument or simply yielded to political pressure from Harding's friend, the result was the same. President Harding signed Executive Order 3474 in May 1921, quietly transferring control. No fanfare, no public debate. Fall now held the keys. He just needed the right buyers. They wouldn't be hard to find. The scent of easy oil money travels fast in certain circles. Enter Harry F. Sinclair and Edward L. Doheny, oil titans. Men who had wrestled fortunes from the earth, who understood that in Washington sometimes the best deals weren't made through bids but through connections. They'd known Fall for years. They likely didn't need a formal invitation. The back channels buzzed. Meetings were arranged far from public view. Imagine Sinclair perhaps meeting Fall late one evening.
Mr. Secretary, good of you to see me on such short notice. I hear Teapot Dome is available for development now. My Mammoth Oil has the resources, the technology to tap that potential efficiently. More efficiently, I dare say, than anyone else. Of course, such an exclusive arrangement. Well, it requires a certain understanding, a demonstration of gratitude, perhaps, for your vision.
Similar conversations likely happened with Doheny regarding Elk Hills. The deals were struck in shadow. Teapot Dome leased to Sinclair's Mammoth Oil. Elk Hills leased to Doheny's Pan American. No competition, no public scrutiny, just quiet signatures on contracts that handed over national assets. And then, the gratitude began to flow, thick and fast as the oil they hoped to pump. Doheny's loan arrived first. His son Ned, acting as courier, delivered that infamous little black bag stuffed with $100,000 in cash directly to Fall in Washington. Imagine the weight of it, the feel of those crisp bills, the suffocating secrecy in the room, Ned Doheny later testified.
Father asked me to take it to Mr. Fall, said Mr. Fall needed some help, a loan between friends. I just dropped it off, didn't ask questions, wasn't my place to ask questions.
A loan between friends? Right. Meanwhile, Sinclair's contributions rolled into cash payments. Generous amounts of valuable Liberty bonds transferred discreetly. Even livestock. Prize cattle shipped to Fall's ranch in New Mexico, the Three Rivers Ranch, which Fall was suddenly, inexplicably, able to expand significantly. He paid off decades-old debts. He bought neighboring land. He lived like a man whose ship had suddenly miraculously come in, far too miraculously. In the tight-knit, gossip-fueled world of Washington, D.C., such a rapid change in fortune doesn't go unnoticed for long. Competitors who'd been shut out of the oil leases started asking questions. Watchdog journalists began sniffing around the edges of the Interior Department. Whispers turned into rumors, rumors into pointed questions printed in small newspapers. The smoke was starting to drift out from under the closed doors. And the smoke reached Senator Thomas J. Walsh. The Montana Bulldog wasn't just interested, he was intrigued. He'd seen enough backroom deals and smelled enough political rot in his career to recognize the signs. The secrecy of the leases, Fall's sudden wealth, the identities of the men who benefited, it didn't add up. It felt wrong. Despite potential political pressure, Fall was, after all, a fellow former senator and Harding appointee. Walsh decided to dig. He convinced his colleagues. The Senate Committee on Public Lands and Surveys officially launched its investigation in late 1923. Walsh held the shovel. He was ready to unearth whatever lay buried.
They thought they could bury it, hide it behind closed doors, fancy lawyers, and Harding's smile. $100,000 in a black bag. Prize bulls. For the nation's oil? The sheer arrogance of it. These men, Fall, Doheny, Sinclair, they think the rules don't apply to them. They think loyalty buys silence. They're wrong. The truth has a way of seeping out, like oil through rock, and I intend to find it.
The hearings began, and they were pure political theater noir style. Walsh, acting as both prosecutor and detective, patiently, relentlessly built his case in the public eye. He called witness after witness, clerks who handled suspicious paperwork, ranch hands from New Mexico who testified about the sudden arrival of expensive livestock, bankers who tracked Fall's loan repayments, and of course the main players themselves. Albert Fall returned to the witness stand, his earlier confidence replaced by a brittle defensiveness. He sparred with Walsh, his denials sounding increasingly hollow under the weight of mounting evidence. He stuck to the friendly loan story regarding Doheny's cash. Let's listen in on a likely exchange.
Mr. Fall, let's revisit this $100,000 payment from Mr. Doheny. You maintain it was simply a loan, out of friendship, to help you purchase the Harris Ranch adjacent to your own? Yet, no promissory note was signed at the time, was there? No interest rate discussed? no repayment schedule established until after this committee began its inquiries?
Senator, I've told you. Ed Doheny and I go way back. He saw I needed help. He offered it. It was a personal matter between gentlemen. This committee is twisting a simple act of friendship into something sordid. There was no connection, none whatsoever, between that loan and the Elk Hills lease. It's an outrageous accusation.
Doheny himself maintained the friendly loan facade when he testified smooth and composed. Sinclair, meanwhile, treated the Senate committee with barely disguised contempt. He refused to answer key questions about his dealings with Fall regarding Teapot Dome, leading to a citation for contempt of Congress. He even, astonishingly, admitted to hiring those private detectives to follow senators, claiming he needed to protect himself from persecution. His arrogance was almost as vast as his oil fields. Amidst this swirling vortex of accusation and denial, President Harding embarked on a cross-country voyage of understanding, perhaps seeking to escape the heat in Washington, perhaps genuinely trying to reconnect with the people. But the stress, the rumors, the knowledge of his friends' betrayals, it took its toll. On the 2nd of August, 1923, in a San Francisco hotel room, Warren G. Harding died. The official story cited a stroke, maybe a heart attack. But the timing, just as the Teapot Dome investigation was tightening its grip, inevitably fueled darker speculation that persists to this day. Another shadow fell across the nation. Harding's death didn't stop the investigation. If anything, it intensified the public's demand for answers. The legal battles dragged on for years, a complex dance between high-priced lawyers and government prosecutors. The oil barons, Doheny and Sinclair, threw their immense wealth into their defense. They argued semantics, attacked witness credibility, played the system like the high-stakes poker game it resembled, and for them, mostly, it worked. Doheny, incredibly, was acquitted of bribery. The jury accepted the friendly loan story despite the mountain of circumstantial evidence. Sinclair also beat the bribery charge. Justice, it seemed, wore a different blindfold when dealing with millionaires. Sinclair did serve some months, but only for contempt and for that blatant attempt at jury tampering. A slap on the wrist, many felt, for men who had conspired to loot the nation's resources. The system, cynical observers noted, had protected its own, but one man couldn't escape the net Walsh had so painstakingly woven. Albert B. Fall, the linchpin, the man who had betrayed the public trust for personal gain. His trial focused specifically on the bribe from Doheny. And here, finally, the dam broke. The evidence, particularly the timing of the loan and Fall's sudden wealth, was too damning to ignore. The jury saw through the facade. In 1929, the verdict came down. Guilty. Albert Fall was convicted of accepting a bribe from Edward Doheny. The irony was almost too much to bear. The giver walked, the taker fell. Fall was sentenced to 1 year in federal prison and fined $100,000. A stiff penalty, but perhaps small compared to the scale of the betrayal. He appealed, fought it for years, but ultimately, he served his time. He carried the ignominious distinction, the first U.S. Cabinet Secretary ever imprisoned for felonies committed while holding his office. A monumental fall from grace, a tumble from the heights of power into the cold shadow of a prison cell, all fueled by simple, timeless human greed. An ambition that curdled into corruption, leaving an indelible stain on the glittering facade of the Roaring Twenties. So the wheels turned, grinding slow but grinding fine, at least for one man. Albert Fall paid the price, a cautionary tale whispered whenever power and resources intersect. That conviction, the first of its kind, stands as a grim landmark, a reminder that even the highest office offers no immunity from the consequences of corruption, from the corrosive power of simple human avarice. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Looking back across a century filled with its own scandals and shadows, has anything truly fundamental changed? What do you think? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll be back soon, digging through the archives dragging another story out from the shadows where power, money, and human nature collide. Until then, stay vigilant. Keep your eyes open. You never know what darkness hides just beneath the surface.